Our second speaker is Arnold August, who I should also add is the moving spirit behind this panel. Arnold is a Montreal-based author of 3 books on US-Cuba-Latin America. As an award-winning journalist, he publishes in English, Spanish, and French on several continents, collaborates with major alternative news media organizations such as teleSur TV, Cuban TV, Press TV, and Friends of Socialist China. He is contributing editor for the Canada Files, member of the International Manifesto Group, the general gathering in support of the choice of resistance based in Palestine and Beirut, the Black Alliance for Peace, the Solidarity Network in the United States, and Central South University of Human Rights Center, Changsha, China. So Arnold, please go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Radhika. I would like to just add that I have to thank all of the speakers and co-sponsors who agreed to participate in this webinar. I was very happy to hear the previous speaker, Adan Chavez, mention Quebec 2001. It was very important. Allow me to, I was going to speak about Quebec 2001 in any case for obvious reason, but I'm still going to, but I will deal with different aspects that were not covered by Adan Chavez. And that is, firstly, it said that Chavez was the only head of state in that summit in Quebec City that took a progressive stand. That is true, but Hugo Chavez had objectively 60,000 people as his allies in the streets of Quebec demonstrating against that summit, against globalized capitalism, and also against the free trade area of the Americas. 60,000, and while they carried out the demonstrations, they also had a people's assembly in which invited people were from Canada, Latin America, and France that participated. Now, of course, the Canadian state, rather than listening to the demands of the people from all the hemisphere, they set up barricades. They had 7,000 cops there to try to defend the venue from the demonstrators, and had at their disposal no less than 5,000 tear gas canisters. There was a war broke out, sort of to speak, between the demonstrators and the security who tried to protect the security. In fact, the part of the barricades they set up were actually overturned at one point. And in the end result, there was 463 people arrested, but inside the halls of that summit, everyone knew about it, they heard about it. And so it was a very important event. Now, when Chavez was there in that event in Quebec City, he had a reservation on a couple of points of that declaration, which is written in the final declaration, that Hugo Chavez has a reserve with regard to 2 points. One is paragraph 1 and paragraph 6 of that final declaration, because it defines democracy according to the US notion of representative democracy. So this is in the record books. Now, it was also mentioned by Adan Chavez that this was the beginning of further collaboration between, on the one hand, Venezuela and Cuba, as well as their respective leaders, Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro. The next step in this cementing of relationship after Quebec in 2001 took place just a few days later, when on April 25th, 2001, Fidel Castro took the very rare, unusual step of sending a message to the Mesa Redonda television, which is the most important TV political program in Cuba. The message basically opposing Chrétien, using providing a pretext for him supporting the exclusion of Cuba from that summit of the Americas, and thus saying that we have cannot agree with Chrétien's view on our democracy in Cuba. Now, it was not over. A few days later, I received a phone call from the Cuban authorities. I was in Montreal. Come to Cuba. We need you in Cuba. So, of course, I went to Cuba. Soon after arriving, we were I was in a room with representatives of other governments in South America whose governments did not support, whose governments supported the expulsion of Cuba, or the not accepting Cuba to be part of the Summit of America, such as Argentina and such as Uruguay. So we were invited to speak in the Tribuna in the May 1st massive 1 million people yearly march on May 1st, and they spoke. And when I spoke, of course, I used the opportunity to tell the truth about the Chrétien government, the Canadian government, so-called hypocrisy with regards to democracy, with regards to democracy in Cuba, the so-called violation of human rights, when we saw just only a few days earlier how when people were trying to have their voices heard in Quebec City, a massive repression took place by the Canadian state against these peoples. And also I said, look, if Chrétien wants to deal with the issue of human rights, why doesn't he look south of the border in the United States? There is a problem of human rights there, not in Cuba. And as well, saying that Canada is known for its suppression, genocidal policy towards the native peoples in Canada. And I could not help but use an important point that was raised in Quebec City when a reporter asked Chrétien, well, what do you think about the 60,000 people who are demonstrating here against this whole event? Well, his answer was a typical Canadian response. Well, they could be elected to parliament if they feel so strongly about their views. We know about this cynical operation. So Hugo Chavez, he reserved the right. He did not sign the declaration as a result of paragraphs 1 and 6 in that declaration, which put the accent on participatory democracy as an attempt to exclude Cuba as a pretext. Soon after that, on April 25th, I got a call from the I read that with iPad. Yeah, right. I got a call from Cuba, and this, as I mentioned before, what I had to say over there. Now, what has happened since 2001 in Quebec City? I would say that we have the Los Angeles Summit in Quebec City, in which, like in Quebec precedent, a People's Summit was organized in opposition to the Biden policy of exclusion in that summit. Now, I like to deal with like what has happened between 2001 and 2022 now. What are the major differences? Well, we have had one after another pink tide, waves of pink tide going on. I would like to deal with the current one: Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Bolivia. Now, I believe they are all part of the pink tide. In my view, what we have to look not so much as the leaders. For if we take the example of the leader of Chile, Boric, he is of course controversial whether he's left or not. But I think, in my view, the most important thing is to see the mass movement which arose, and in which someone like Boric, he wrote the crescendo of that mass movement in the several years preceding his election. And I asked my friends in Montreal, I have a lot of friends in Montreal who are of Chilean origin. I said, well, what do you think of Boric? Well, the answer was simple and unanimous. They said, Boric or not Boric, we are going ahead with our program that came out of these demonstrations. That is, if Boric does not follow through what he said, then they will have to deal with us. And I think this is why I would include all of these countries as part of the pink tide. And the other major event that makes it important difference between now and 2001 in Quebec City is the rise of China as an important political economic factor, and its increasingly close ties with Latin America, which we did not have before. And also I would add Iran, because it specifically has very close ties with Venezuela, assisting Venezuela to kickstart its economy. So in closing, I'm going to say simply, like in Canada, what should we do in Canada with regards to the current situation? I think that the most important thing that we have as journalists, those of us who are involved in alternative press, we have to give increasingly more space to the mass movements in Canada, for example, the First Nations, the trade unions, etc., in order to try to push the movement forward using the 2001 Quebec City as a model. And lastly, I would say that it's important in Canada that we say loud and boldly and loud that Canada should have no place in any project of Latin American integration, because Canada, like the United States, is part of the US imperialist attempt to still impose the Monroe Doctrine and to contain Latin America, not to allow countries coming to the fore to oppose US imperialist domination of the region. Thank you.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.